My husband Drew and I trundled off at 6:30 a.m. in a gloomy mist over Edinburgh to eat aged cheddar cheese and beans on toast, me, and delicate shavings of salmon on poached egg, him, at Café Edinburgh. I picked my entree because it seemed like an interesting combination. Both our meals were hearty and delicious. Despite the melancholic weather, there was something poetic about the street scene. Construction workers, garbage collectors, runners, and early risers out and about before tourists descended en masse upon Grassmarket. At 8, our guide Poppy of Scottish Odyssey picked us up at Blair Street right in front of the Ibis Hotel in a full-size van that took up the width of an entire narrow lane. Poppy is a young guide, probably in her early 30s, if that. She's been professional and organized from the get-go. We video chatted with her a few months ago so she could get a sense of what we liked, and then she built our custom itinerary. After a half day and overnight in Edinburgh, she whisked us off the direction of the Highlands, which is a popular tourist destination northwest of Edinburgh. We had initially considered hiring or renting a car, but since we will only have 3 more days in Scotland, we decided to hire a driver. Drew is careful and has driven on the British side, left, but seeing the dizzying roundabouts and arrows pointing all sorts of directions, it appeared we made a good choice, leaving it up to a pro. Our first stop was Stirling Castle, which is known for William Wallace of Braveheart fame capturing its bridge in 1297 against the English, despite being outnumbered. Delivering a victory for Scotland earned him a berth in its history forever. This national treasure sits at the top of a craggy hill, a forbidding castle in a dark fairy tale. By the time the gates opened for us at 9:30, the gloomy weather had given way to blue skies and sun. Though the temperatures were still cool, I wondered if I would be overdressed the rest of the day in wool leggings and a long-sleeved Under Armour shirt. We breezed through for 45 minutes as we have a scheduled stop next, which was fine with me. Although I love taking photos of architecture, stairs in particular that lead the eye, I personally don't like museum stops where each display is explained in excruciating detail. From Stirling, Poppy drove us to Loch Lubnaig for a guided hour of paddleboarding. Ever since we've taken up the hobby, we've made a point to paddleboard on as many vacations as we can. We thought about bringing our Sea Gods SUPs, but we knew it would be crazy trying to lug them around on cobblestone streets. Good call. It was nice to simply arrive, get in wetsuits, and paddle on already inflated boards. Our guide Sam name-dropped several celebrities who have been sighted in the town next to the picturesque loch, which is Scottish for lake, and I can see why. It's quiet and calm, a perfect antidote to the rat race. By the end of our paddleboarding experience, I was sweating in the wetsuit and considered dunking myself in the cold water, but we had a train to catch. A sighting of the Jacobite train, also known as Hogwarts Express, that is, as it would traverse the Glenfinnan Viaduct some 90 minutes away. The experience of seeing the steam engine train made famous in the Harry Potter movies, thus its nickname, travel over the stately viaduct, typically happens 4 times a day and has a visitor center and sizable parking lots devoted to it. We rushed down a trail with other first-time visitors to a slightly muddy area where we staked a spot in the shade to see the train pass from the left to the right at 3:15 p.m. Now mind you, I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan, though I think J.K. Rowling is a brilliant writer and I've watched the entire movie franchise. But ever since I found out about this train, I've wanted to ride it, which we will do tomorrow. Poppy, bless her heart, also managed to add, quote, see the Jacobite train go over the viaduct, unquote. At the appointed time, a train whistle blew. We all turned our heads to the left and switched our camera equipment on. In its hues of reds and blacks, the train was an elegant nod to the past, like a vintage toy come alive. I expected it to give out billows of steam like I'd seen in online photos, but alas, it didn't. Well, sure, there were some wisps, but hardly the billows I was hoping for. Perhaps the unseasonably warm temperature wasn't conducive to it. After the train passed for no more than 30 seconds, I caught Drew's expression. It was a wry smile of underwhelm, as though to say, "After all this scurrying around, Jewel, and this is what you brought me here for?" And we burst out laughing. I mean, this is a guy who once went to Greece with his brother to catch Jethro Tull in concert, so obviously our idea of what's worth doing is different, and I love him for it. Once you've seen the Jacobite train on the Glenfinnan Viaduct, then everything else pales in comparison. We decided to pack up and cut our trip to the UK short. Just kidding. Seriously though, by the time we reached the van, I was practically having heat stroke from my winter wear and changed out into a short-sleeved shirt and yoga capris. It was at this time that I realized Poppy was the master of hyperbole, with her declaration that this has been the hottest day of the whole year. Except I don't think she was exaggerating, because I saw people in shorts, tank tops, and Birkenstocks, and no one ever says to add those things on a Scotland late September packing list. But I can forgive them, because one can't begrudge the Scots clear skies and sun despite everyone's weather predictions. It was in this buoyed mood that she drove us through some of the scenic roads that has made the Highlands famous, while we listened to the hauntingly beautiful song Loch Lomond. I mean, here were two brothers who were given a choice: spare your brother's life or yours, and the former punches the latter out cold so that he could make the choice for them. Spoiler alert, he spared his younger brother's life. As Utahns, we know good mountains when we see them, and I can say with certainty the Scots have them good with a capital G. They rise like mythical formations, unspoiled and enjoyed by all through their right to roam laws. As if that weren't unfair enough to the rest of the world, Scotland has 31,000 lovely lochs as well. Around 5 p.m., Poppy dropped us off at our Woodlands lodging in Balashulish, where we read cute instructions on a sheet we could 100% get behind, such as treat the premises like a library except with fewer librarians, or the reception is like Batman but for Woodlands occupants. Drew and I changed for dinner, then walked hand in hand down a country lane surrounded by a lush green golf course, which, come to think of it, Scotland resembles in its entirety. At a little after 6, we showed up for our dinner reservation at the Balashulish Hotel, a 10-minute walk away. During our stroll, I couldn't help but smile. This trip has been busy, but not overly so, and I haven't felt this relaxed in a while. There's some sort of magic being in Scotland, where time seems to slow down. The imposing Balashulish Hotel faces a river-like narrows at the mouth of Loch Lomond. The Narrows, which is where the town gets its name from, Village by the Narrows, is straddled by a gray metal bridge where we hope to catch the sunrise tomorrow. At the restaurant, we were seated by a window. The place had a grand elegance, like I could have worn a sundress had I packed one, and I wouldn't have felt out of place. Our next table over, a dachshund named Teddy had the staff petting him every chance they got and giving him at least 2 treats that I counted, one of which he ate and one that he refused. A heavy meal didn't sound good, so I skipped over the fish and chips. To my pleasant surprise, Drew picked it for his entree while I had their duck confit with rice instead of potatoes. It was the best of both worlds, really. I ate lighter, delicious fare while Drew shared with me his huge piece of haddock, which hands down is the best beer-battered fish I've ever tasted in my life. The coating was lightly crisp, the fish fresh tasting, and just the right amount of doneness. In hindsight, I'm glad I passed on last night's fish and chips from a takeaway shop in Edinburgh, because this is the way to do fish and chips, people. Post-dinner, Drew and I went outside and surveyed the Narrows, wondering how to get down to its banks. A man sitting in a camp chair reading a book next to a van pointed down to a set of steps which he'd been blocking. As we took him up on his offer, we passed his open van door where a couple of small graying dogs shared a bed, admiring the view. Drew and I headed down to the rocks near the water, taking photos of purple foxglove flowers still in bloom against the setting sun. A blue heron in the shallows flew at my approach as I tiptoed around in my ballet flats, trying to avoid some muddy spots. As the sunset faded and we were leaving, we chatted with the man with the dogs in the van. The Edinburgh resident wore shorts and a shirt, marveling at his luck that he had timed his vacation during this warm day. His wife had gone to Provence, France, and she'd lamented she's had a miserable weather so far. I never did get a look at the book that he'd been absorbed in, and now I wish I had. Someone who sits by the Narrows with their dogs looking out from a van as part of his vacation probably knows a thing or two about happiness. And now here I am at the end of the day's tale, stretched out on yet another comfortable Scottish mattress. Our bed is Goldilocks' dream, not too soft, not too firm, just right. And that's not necessarily because we've stayed at any luxury hotels so far. The Woodlands is indeed more like a library, simple, restorative, and quiet, with birds chirping gently outside our window and stretches of green all directions, except I get to eat a piece of Rocky Road brownie left over from our boxed lunch Poppy ordered from her favorite bakery, and there aren't any librarians to tell me I can't.